The wine hit her like a slap. It came without warning. A full glass, hurled from across the table, and Naomi Carter felt the cold red liquid soak through her white uniform shirt, down her collar, across her chest, before she even had time to flinch. The entire restaurant went quiet. Every conversation died. Every fork stopped midair. 43 people turned to look at the black waitress standing motionless in the center of the dining floor, drenched in Chateau Petrus that cost more than her monthly rent. The man who threw it, Park Sung-woo, a property developer with 3 luxury buildings in Gangnam and the temper of a man who had never once been told no, stood with his arms still extended, pointing at her like she was something he had stepped in. "I said medium rare," he said. "Not medium, not rare. Medium, rare. Is that too complicated for you?" Naomi didn't speak. She set down the tray she was carrying with both hands, calmly, the way she had learned to do everything in this building. Slowly, carefully, invisibly. "I apologize, sir," she said. "I'll have the kitchen prepare another one immediately." "I don't want another one." Park Sung-woo smoothed his jacket and looked around the room, performing for his table of investors. "I want to know why a restaurant like this is hiring people who can't follow simple instructions. Is this charity work now? Is this a charity restaurant?" Some of the men at his table laughed. One of the women looked away. The head waiter, Jung Hyun, stood near the host station and said absolutely nothing. This was Aria, the most expensive restaurant in Seoul. A 17-table establishment on the 52nd floor of a glass tower in Uido, with a 2-year wait list and a dress code enforced at the elevator. Every dish was a performance. Every guest was powerful. And Naomi Carter, 24 years old, originally from Atlanta, Georgia, was the only person of African descent who had ever worked there. She had gotten the job through sheer force of documentation, a culinary hospitality degree, 2 years at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris, a letter of recommendation from a French maitre d', who described her as the most naturally composed server I have encountered in 30 years. Manager O had hired her reluctantly and had been waiting for her to fail ever since. Tonight felt like his wish was coming true. Naomi picked up the empty wine glass from the floor. She kept her face neutral, her breathing steady, her hands perfectly still. This was not the first time someone had humiliated her in this building. 3 weeks ago, a politician's wife had waved her over and then asked another waitress to take her order, as if Naomi were decoration. Last month, a table of businessmen had left her a folded napkin instead of a tip, with the words "service" was invisible written inside. She had read it, folded it back up, put it in her pocket and gone to the bathroom, where she allowed herself exactly 90 seconds to feel it, then washed her hands, dried them, looked in the mirror and walked back out. She needed this job. Not because she had no options, but because she had a plan, and the plan required money, and the money required this job, and this job required her to survive people like Park Sung-woo. So she crossed the floor with the stained cloth over her arm and disappeared into the kitchen, where the head chef took one look at her and shook his head slowly. "You okay?" he asked. "Can you remake table 11's steak? Medium rare." "Naomi." "I'm fine, chef. Steak, please." She stood at the edge of the pass, dabbing at her collar with a dry towel. The wine wouldn't come out. She knew that. She kept dabbing anyway. That was when Jung Hyun appeared at her shoulder. "You need to stay on the floor," he said. "I'm waiting for the steak. Seojin can take it. It's my table." Jung Hyun lowered his voice. "The private guest arrives in 20 minutes. I need you away from the main floor." Naomi looked at him. "Which private guest?" He didn't answer, but the way his jaw moved, tight, controlled like a man trying not to show fear, told her everything she needed to know. Aria hosted private bookings twice a month, after the restaurant closed to the public. She had worked 3 of them. Each time, the identity of the guest was never announced. The staff was reduced to 4, and Manager O arrived personally to supervise. Tonight, she was about to find out why. By 10:15, every other diner had gone. The kitchen staff had been dismissed except for the head chef and one line cook. The lights above the main dining floor were dimmed. 42 of the 43 tables were empty, stripped of their linens, dark and silent. One table remained set, It was positioned at the far end of the room, beside the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Han River, where the city lights spread out below like scattered diamonds. White linen, crystal glassware, a single orchid in a black vase. For chairs, one place setting. Manager O was already there, standing at the edge of the carpet with his hands clasped behind his back. He was sweating despite the cold air. Naomi had never seen him sweat. "You," he said when she appeared. "You're serving tonight." She blinked. "Why me?" "Because the others refused." He said it flatly, like it was a reasonable explanation. "You'll pour water when he sits. You won't speak unless spoken to. You won't ask his name. You won't look at him directly." "Who is he?" Manager O turned and looked at her with the expression of a man who deeply regretted his decisions. "His name," he said, "is Kong Min-jae. If you're already hooked, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Drop a like and let's find out who Kong Min-jae really is." The kitchen went quiet behind her. Even the head chef, who was not a man easily impressed, looked up slowly from his station. Naomi didn't recognize the name, but she recognized the silence it created. He arrived without a motorcade. No flashing lights. No visible security sweep. One black vehicle stopped at the building's private entrance below, and 3 minutes later, Kong Min-jae walked through the restaurant's rear door as if he owned the building, which, Naomi would later learn, he partially did. He was in his mid-50s, with silver at his temples and the kind of stillness that didn't come from peace but from absolute control. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and moved through the space like a man accustomed to rooms rearranging themselves around him. 2 men followed at a distance, not bodyguards in the obvious sense, no earpieces or folded arms, just men who walked the way trained dogs followed a scent. Quiet, purposeful, devastating. Min-jae took his seat at the window table without looking at anyone. Naomi poured the water. Her hand was steady. She had learned to make her hands steady a long time ago. Min-jae looked at his phone. She stepped back. The 2 men positioned themselves near the pillars. Manager O hovered at the edge of the carpet like a man waiting to be executed or forgiven, and Naomi understood, watching him, that these were the only 2 outcomes that existed when Kong Min-jae was in a room. She served the first course herself, set the plate down, stepped back. He didn't acknowledge her, which was exactly what she wanted. 20 minutes passed without incident. Then the kitchen door swung open, and she heard the voice before she saw him. "Where is she?" Park Sung-woo, the man who had thrown the wine, had apparently not left the building. He had been in the bar on the floor below, still drinking, still burning with the specific fury of a man who believed he had not been adequately feared. He had convinced himself that his evening wasn't finished. And now, still in his jacket, wine stain on his own cuff from where he had gestured too aggressively, he walked back onto the main floor with his phone in hand, intent on making a formal complaint to someone. Anyone, about the waitress who had, in his estimation, ruined his dinner. He was halfway across the floor before he registered that the room was dim and mostly empty. He stopped, looked around, saw Min-jae at the window table. The color left his face. He knew that name. Everyone in that building knew that name. He took 1 step backward. But Min-jae had already looked up. The 2 men near the pillars had already moved. Park Sung-woo froze where he stood, and in the absolute silence that followed, he did what frightened powerful men always do. He pointed at the nearest person who couldn't point back. "She!" He gestured at Naomi. "This woman spilled wine on me earlier. I was making a formal, 'You're in my space,'" Min-jae said. 3 words, barely above a murmur. But Park Sung-woo stopped mid-sentence as if he had walked into a wall. Yes, sir. Of course. I apologize." He was already backing toward the door. "I didn't realize. I'll leave immediately." "You threw the wine," Min-jae said. It wasn't a question. Park Sung-woo opened his mouth, closed it. "I watched the corridor camera while I was waiting," Min-jae said, still looking at his phone. "You threw an entire glass onto a woman half your size because your steak was cooked incorrectly. Is that right?" The silence stretched. It was the service. Leave my building." Min Jae's eyes returned to the table. The conversation was over. Park Sung-woo was already gone before the sentence finished, moving so quickly that Naomi heard him hit the exit door with both palms. The room settled. Naomi stood near the serving station with a clean cloth over her arm, her expression giving nothing away. But something had shifted in her chest. Small and warm and unfamiliar. Not gratitude exactly. Something older than that. Something that felt like being seen. She composed herself and approached the table to refill the water. She leaned forward slightly. The glass was nearly full. She tipped the pitcher just enough. And then her collar slipped. It was the wine. The earlier soaking had loosened the top button of her uniform. And as she leaned, the stiff white collar fell open at the back of her neck, just for a moment, before she straightened. She didn't notice. Min Jae did. She heard the sound first, the soft, precise impact of a crystal glass striking marble, before she turned and saw it. His water glass, on the floor, unbroken, rolling in a slow arc toward the leg of the table. He had not dropped it. He had let it go. His hands were flat on the table, both of them, pressing down as if the table might otherwise rise beneath him. He was looking at the back of her neck. "Stand still," he said. His voice had changed. The controlled, compressed authority was gone. Something else was in it. Something raw and completely unexpected in a man like this. Naomi stopped moving. "Turn around slowly," he said. She turned. He was staring at her with an expression she could not name. Not anger. Not recognition in the ordinary sense. Something beyond recognition. Something closer to the face a person makes when they see a ghost. When they see proof of something they had spent 20 years teaching themselves not to believe. "What is that tattoo?" he asked. She reached back instinctively and touched the small mark at the base of her neck. The black phoenix, wings spread, no larger than her thumb. She had always had it. She had never thought much about it. "I've had it since I was a baby," she said. Min Jae's hands began to shake. Not the trembling of an old man or a sick one. The trembling of a man who was trying, with every practiced mechanism of control he possessed, to contain something enormous. Something that wanted to break out of his chest and shatter the entire room. He looked at her face, then at the tattoo, then at her face again. "Sit down," he said quietly. Naomi blinked. "Sir, please." The word sounded like it cost him something. "Sit down." She sat. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to the two men near the pillars and whatever he communicated to them. A look, a gesture, a word she didn't catch, made both of them leave the room immediately. Then he turned to where Manager O was still standing at the edge of the carpet, and without raising his voice, without any visible change in expression, said 6 words. "Everyone out. Close the floor. Now." Manager O left so quickly he forgot his clipboard. And then it was just the two of them, in a darkened restaurant on the 52nd floor, the city burning quietly below, and Kang Min Jae, the most feared man in Seoul's underworld, sitting across from a 24-year-old waitress from Atlanta with wine on her collar and a tattoo she had never once questioned, trying to remember how to breathe. "Who are your parents?" he asked. "My adoptive parents. They're in Atlanta. James and Denise Carter." "And before them?" "I don't know," she said. "I was abandoned as an infant. No records. No name. Just the tattoo." Min Jae closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. He didn't speak for almost 2 minutes. Naomi sat across from him and did what she had learned to do in difficult rooms. She waited. She watched his hands stop trembling and then start again. She watched him press 2 fingers against his mouth, the way people do when they are trying to hold something inside. She watched the most powerful criminal in the city fight to keep himself composed at a dinner table, and she found, strangely, that she was not afraid of him. "My brother's name was Kang Min-soo," he finally said. She said nothing. "He was older than me by 12 years. He was the one who was supposed to lead our family. He was better than me in every way that mattered." Min Jae looked at the window, at the river, at the lights. In 2003, he fell in love with an American woman, a journalist. Her name was Adiz. She was covering trade negotiations in Seoul for an international paper, and she and Min-soo met at a government reception, and that was the end of both of them. He said it without bitterness, almost with tenderness. He couldn't bring her into the family publicly. You understand what our family was. What we did. A foreign wife, an African wife, it would have been used against him from every direction. So they kept it private. Private ceremony. Private life. And when she became pregnant, he stopped. They were so careful. They told no one. But someone always knows. Naomi's chest was very still. A rival organization found out, Min-jae said. Not the pregnancy. They found out about the marriage, which was already enough of a weapon. They decided to use it. They attacked the family estate in Gyeonggi-do in November of 2003. The main house burned. My brother died trying to get his wife out. He paused. Adoptee died 2 days later at the hospital. From the smoke. The baby, they told us the baby died in the fire. No body was recovered, but the estate was destroyed. We believed it because we had no reason not to. Someone survived, Naomi said. Adoptee was a journalist. She had colleagues, people she trusted outside the country. We discovered much later that she had made arrangements before the attack. She had sensed it coming, the way people in dangerous situations develop instincts. She had contacted trusted friends in the United States. She had a plan to send the child abroad if anything happened. He looked at Naomi. We could never confirm it. We assumed the plan had failed, that the baby was gone. She sent me to Atlanta, Naomi said. He looked at her, just looked at her. The Carters, she said slowly. James and Denise, they were friends of hers. That's what you're telling me. I believe so. You believe. I know, he said. I know because of that tattoo. My brother had the same mark. A family mark, given to children at birth on the back of the neck just below the hairline. A black phoenix. It's been our family's insignia for 4 generations. It is not a coincidence. There is no version of this that is a coincidence. Naomi sat very quietly. She thought about every question she had ever filed away and stopped asking because the answers never came. She thought about the photograph in her parents' hallway. Her at 6 months old, dark-eyed, solemn, gripping a yellow rattle in both hands. She thought about how James Carter used to say she came into their lives like something that was always supposed to be there. She thought about how Denise Carter had, once, in a moment Naomi was probably not meant to see, pressed her lips together and looked at the photograph and cried without making any sound at all. She thought about how she had never had a name for that expression. Now she did. I need air, she said. Min-jae nodded. He didn't stop her. She walked to the far end of the dining floor and stood in front of the window and looked at Seoul. This city she had moved to 8 months ago with her hospitality degree and her plan and her savings and the low, persistent feeling she could never fully explain, the one that had said, without words, go there. She had always assumed it was ambition, the desire to work in Asian markets, career strategy. She no longer assumed that. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Unknown number. A text message. For words. Don't trust him either. She turned around. Min-jae was still at the table, watching her. Across the room. Too far to have seen her phone. She walked back. Sat down. Looked at him. Someone just sent me a message, she said. It says not to trust you. Min-jae didn't react the way she expected. He didn't deny it or deflect. He looked at the table for a moment and then said, How long have you been in Seoul? 8 months. And this number, you've never seen it before? No. Then someone has been watching you longer than tonight. He looked up at her. Which means they already knew who you were. Before I did. The implication landed slowly. Someone knew I was here, she said. And didn't want you to find out. He said nothing. You said the family believed the baby died, Naomi said. Everyone in your family? Min-jae's expression shifted. Something carefully neutral dropped into place. Everyone, he said. But the pause before the word was just long enough. She filed that away. She didn't have time to ask more, because Min-jae's phone lit up on the table and he looked at it and went very still. He stood. His movements changed, the composure returned harder and faster than before, the way armor goes on. "We need to leave," he said. "What's happening? I'll explain in the car. Come now. I'm not getting in a car with someone I just met." He looked at her. "Someone just sent that message to warn you away from me, which means they know you're here, which means they know what you look like, which means staying in this building makes you a target. And I am, at this moment, the only person in Seoul who wants you alive." She looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then she picked up her bag. Before we follow Naomi into what comes next, if the story has you locked in, make sure you're subscribed so you never get cut off mid-story. Hit the like button right now and let's keep going. They were halfway to the exit when she heard it. Not an explosion, nothing cinematic. Just the quiet sound of the stairwell door at the far end of the corridor opening and then clicking shut in a way that stairwell doors didn't, because stairwell doors had auto-closers and this one was being held. Min Jae's 2 men materialized from somewhere and formed a moving boundary around them. And Naomi did not slow down, did not look back, kept her breathing measured and her feet moving, and thought very clearly. "I came to Seoul with a plan. This was not the plan. But she was here. And the city was burning with secrets that had her face on them. And somewhere in this building, someone was holding a door open and waiting." She walked faster. They hid her in a safe house in Mapo, a quiet apartment above a laundromat 2 streets from the river. No windows facing the street. One entrance. Min Jae's people changed positions at the door every 4 hours. He sat at the kitchen table across from her with 2 phones and a glass of water. And for the first 40 minutes, he made calls in Korean while she sat on the other side of the table and tried to understand what her life had become. Then he put down both phones. "The attack tonight was a warning," he said. "Not an attempt. If they wanted you dead, you would be. That's a strange way to make me feel better. I'm not trying to make you feel better. I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're in." He looked at her steadily. "Someone inside my organization has been running a private operation for 22 years. Monitoring the family, managing information, ensuring that certain questions never got answered. I believed the attack on the estate in 2003 was carried out by the Shin Syndicate. I spent 5 years dismantling them as a consequence." He paused. "I no longer believe it was them." Naomi sat forward. "You think it was someone in your own family? I think it was someone who wanted Min-soo removed, who wanted to eliminate his bloodline as a possible succession path, and who has spent 2 decades making sure that no child survived to complicate that position. But I did survive. Yes. And whoever it is, they found out tonight. The message to your phone confirms they were already watching you. They may have known for longer than tonight. They may have positioned you here deliberately. Your job at Aria." He stopped. "What about my job? Who helped you get it?" Naomi thought. "A placement agency. In Itaewon. They matched my credentials with open roles in Seoul's luxury hospitality sector. It was a standard process. I applied, I interviewed, I was offered the position." "The name of the agency?" She told him. Something crossed his face. "That agency," he said carefully, "is owned through 3 shell companies by a man named Baek Jun-ho. He is one of the 3 senior members of my organization's inner council." The quiet in the room became something heavier. "He put me here," she said. "He put me in that restaurant. Either to use you as leverage," Min Jae said, "or to keep you close enough to eliminate at the right moment. Or both." Naomi looked at the table. She looked at her hands. Then she looked up. "You said the tattoo is a family mark," she said. "Everyone in your family knows about it." "Yes. Baek Jun-ho would know about it." "Yes. So when I turned up in Seoul, in a restaurant your inner council knew you frequented with that tattoo visible." She stopped. Min Jae said it quietly. "He was waiting to see what I would do when I found you." She exhaled slowly. "This was a test. Or a trap. For you. Not for me. You were always for me." He said it without cruelty. Just the flat honesty of a man calibrating a situation. "Your existence is a weapon. Whoever controls you, controls what your existence proves, what it claims, what it demands, holds significant power over the family's succession and over the people who have spent 20 years arranging that succession. The documents, Naomi said. Min-jae went very still. She reached up slowly and touched the tattoo at the back of her neck. You said it's been the family's mark for 4 generations. My father, Min-soo, was the heir. The tattoo was given to his children. But my mother was a journalist. An investigative journalist who knew exactly what kind of family she had married into. She looked at Min-jae. She knew something was coming. She made arrangements to hide me. But she also would have done something with what she knew. She would have documented it. Protected it somehow. Somewhere only I could find it. Min-jae did not speak for a very long time. There were rumors, he finally said. After the attack. Rumors that Adoptee had been working on a story before she died. A long-form investigation, years of work, covering the connections between organized crime, the prosecution service, a network of politicians, and 3 of the country's largest conglomerates. Evidence that had never surfaced. Everyone assumed it burned in the estate. It didn't burn, Naomi said. She looked at him. He looked at her. She reached back, slowly, and pressed 2 fingers against the tattoo. Not just touching the skin, but pressing beneath it, along the edge of the hairline, where the ink had always felt fractionally thicker, where there had always been a small ridge she had assumed was scar tissue. She had asked a doctor about it once, at 17, and been told it was normal. Just how the skin had taken the ink. She reached into her bag and took out her phone, turned on the flashlight, held it at a specific angle against the back of her neck, reflected in the dark glass of the kitchen window. Under the direct light, beneath the familiar lines of the phoenix, faint secondary marks appeared. Not tattoo lines, something else. Something printed or etched beneath the surface, visible only at the right angle with the right light. Coordinates. Min-jae leaned forward, looked at what the light revealed. She had it put there, he breathed. In the tattoo. The location. She had it encoded in the tattoo. She knew they would come for her, Naomi said. She knew the only thing that would survive was me. They found the vault 48 hours later, in an old banking facility in Jongno that Adoptee had rented under a journalist's legal trust, with a key embedded in a document filed at a Seoul notary in 2003, assigned to a child of Kang Min-soo by name, to be accessed upon verified identification. The tattoo, photographed, authenticated by a forensic specialist, served as the identification. Inside, 14 years of documented evidence. Financial records, recorded testimonies, bank transfers, photographs, surveillance logs, connecting Baek Joon-ho, 7 members of the National Assembly, 4 corporate executives, 2 sitting prosecutors, and the leadership of 2 organized crime syndicates. Evidence that had never reached the public because the woman who gathered it had died before she could use it. But she had made sure it could not be destroyed. She had made sure it would wait for someone it could trust. When Baek Joon-ho arrived at the vault with armed men, expecting either the documents or Naomi, leverage either way, he found instead a live broadcast. Naomi, on camera, with Min-jae beside her, reading the document index into a feed that was already running on 6 independent journalist networks, 3 of which were international. The files were already transmitted. The evidence was already public. The arrests began within 6 hours. Police moved simultaneously on 17 locations. Politicians issued statements that convinced no one. Executives went unreachable. Baek Joon-ho was taken at Incheon Airport with a bag and a one-way ticket to Macau. By the following morning, the empire had not collapsed. It had simply become visible. And visibility for the people inside it was the same thing. Min-jae offered her the family leadership 3 days later, at a quiet meeting in the same Mapo apartment. She didn't take long to answer. I came to Seoul to build something, she said. Not to inherit it. And what you built, what this family built, I don't want any part of running it. He nodded. He looked like he had expected that. He also looked like he respected it. Then what do you want? He asked. She thought about the restaurant, the wine on her collar, the laughter, the arrogant hand pointing at her across the marble floor, the room full of people watching and saying nothing, and the way she had folded herself small and kept moving because she had a plan and the plan required her to survive. A foundation, she said. In Seoul. for international adoptees, people like me who were displaced, who lost access to their heritage and spent their lives not knowing where they came from. Searching. I want to help them search. She paused. And I want to use some of what my mother documented to make sure the legal frameworks protecting adoptees are actually enforced. He sat with that for a moment. I'll fund it, he said. I know you will. 6 months later, the Aria restaurant, the same 52nd floor establishment where Naomi Carter had been soaked in wine and laughed at by a room full of powerful strangers, hosted its annual charity gala. The guest of honor arrived in a dark dress, calm and unhurried, and paused only once in the lobby when she recognized the man standing near the bar. Park Sung-woo. He saw her. The recognition moved across his face in stages. Confusion first, then recollection, then something that was not quite shame but was close enough to be uncomfortable. He lowered his eyes. Naomi looked at him for exactly 1 moment. Then she smiled. Not the waitress smile, not the survival smile, the practiced invisible one, but a real one, quiet and complete. And she walked past him without slowing, into the ballroom where her name was on the program, and took her seat at the head of the table. The city spread out below the windows. The Han River ran through it like something that had always known where it was going. Sometimes the people the world overlooks carry the stories that can change it forever. And sometimes all it takes is one forgotten mark, rising from the ash of everything that was lost, for the truth to finally come home. If the story moved you, hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it means everything to this channel. Subscribe to Afrokorean Storyhouse channel so you never miss a new story, and drop a comment below. Did you see the twist coming? Tell us what hit you hardest. We read every single one.